Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol tournament recap. And today we are taking a look at the Phoenix Rising November tournament. This is actually my home store, and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get into things. So, first and foremost, I'd also just like to apologize for anyone who's watching this kind of as it comes up. Unfortunately, this weekend there will not be a battle report, most likely. There's a tiny chance that late Sunday I'll get a stream or something going, but not super likely. So I'm not banking on it. But unfortunately, school's just kind of caught up with me this week, so haven't been able to get anything recorded or edited or anything like that. But I did spend today, time of recording being Saturday, doing a tournament at my local store. So I figured I might as well get the tournament recap going. Now, of course, I was a big idiot and forgot to take pictures of the rounds and stuff like that. So unfortunately, no pictures for this one. Something I've been getting into the good habit of doing, and then I just completely slipped on it today. So unfortunately, none of that. But it was a good event, so I still want to talk about the games and stuff like that. So first of all, um, congratulations to Brent here. He took first place with Web Warriors. I didn't have the pleasure of playing against him myself today, so can't really speak too much to what he was running, and unfortunately, he didn't share his roster either. But yeah, I pulled seventh place here, going 2-2. So definitely not my finest performance, but I'm always happy with a 2-2. I'm never going to complain about it. So yeah, I will go ahead and we'll jump into things. So first of all, here is my roster. A couple small changes. I've decided to take out Steve 3. He just hasn't been doing it for me lately, so I pulled Steve 3 out of the roster. And I decided to play around with Thanos and Reality Space. I didn't actually end up running it today, but I think he's kind of rude under Steve 1. So I wanted to try it out, and yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see the scenario for it today. Either the matchup felt like it would be better with something else, or I felt like it just wouldn't have been that effective into my opponent, or the threat didn't allow it, or something like that every time. So it never ended up coming up. Scenarios and cards wise, another thing I was trying out here was Ricochet Blast. Now I'm still running Helios Laser here, but I find a lot of the times I've been a little power starved and I haven't been able to get as big of a Helios Laser as I want, so I figured Ricochet Blast might be better in those sorts of cases where I don't think I'm running a team that's going to be wanting to spend all that much power on, especially if I'm running stuff like Carol now. And I just find if I'm throwing less than 20 dice at something, I'm probably better off just doing the Ricochet Blast because that has full rerolls, and Friday I still brings it up to 9 dice, so it's pretty solid there. Yeah, not quite as much spike potential as Helios Laser, but a lot of the times I wasn't getting Helios Laser past 14 to 16 dice was usually what I was throwing into it. So Ricochet Blast for significantly less power is a little bit more consistent, and yeah, I just figured it would be better there. So we tried that out here, and otherwise nothing really changes there. And then over on the crises, the only thing I think that's changed here from previous tournament recaps is Scoundrels is in for Infinity Formula. I just find a lot of my list already kind of ignores cover and stuff like that. It's a little bit closer together, so the fight's a little bit more tight. And yeah, there's not much more than that to it. It's great for Sam. So that was my crises. Then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go into the games here. So I have played obviously 4 games, and I ended up going 2-2. So I guess we'll just kind of go in order here. The first one was up against Khaled, and we were playing on Montesi and Intrusions. Montesi obviously being his. He was playing Midnight Suns to my, of course, Avengers. And yeah, let's see. First of all, did he post his list? Da da da. Here it is. So this was his Midnight Suns list here. So there's some cool things in there. I mean, it's got most of the Midnight Suns roster, and then he's also got Rocket Raccoon, solid 2 threat, Baron Zemo, and Black Bolt, also very solid models. Um, Nothing super surprising or weird here. I think it's relatively standard. So we ended up playing, how many threat we were playing here? We were playing 19, and if I remember correctly, his list was Blade, Immortal Hulk, Ghost Rider, so he was going really tall. He had the Ghost Rider and the Immortal Hulk. And then I think Black Cat was the last one. Yeah, Black Cat would make sense to be the last one there. Over on my end, if we'll go ahead and pull my list back up, So I obviously went with Steve Rogers. And who else did I have here? I'm going to think about this one for just a second. Right. My the rest of my roster. So I had Steve, obviously I already mentioned, but then I had Carol. She was very relevant that game, and then I brought in Luke Cage and Iron Man, and my final four threat was Black Panther. So Black Panther's still kind of in that kind of testing phase with the list. I haven't had too much experience with him yet because I did only recently pick up the model. But he proved his worth pretty well in this game, if I remember correctly. This game was the first one, and it was a four round event, so I'm not 100% confident in the details. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be able to do much of a play by play on this. But really, some of the notable things that happened, I think went even on the first round, or no, on the first round, I think I scored up on the intrusions. Um, so basically, what I ended up doing was I had Steve go up nice and early to grab the book from the middle. I knew this was a bit of a risk because he had obviously Immortal Hulk as well as Ghost Rider, so he was going to be able to get some attacks into him. But if Steve goes down, it's really not the end of the world. And I wanted to kind of encourage if he's going to do anything, then he's gonna be punching Steve instead of necessarily going onto the middle point. And Steve was able to do this kind of ducked behind a nice size four that was kind of shielding him from easy attacks. So that was good. Off to the sides, I had Luke Cage and Iron Man. I think were my models deployed off to. So I actually no, I put Panther and Iron Man. I put Cage down the center. Um, and then so yeah, Iron Man was off towards my left because there was a big building there. I figured I can just kind of sit him up there with cover and he can just blast down. And then over towards my right, I had Black Panther. Similar reason, there was a building that would keep him completely protected, but also because he put Blade on that side, so I figured, if Blade went to go take the intrusion on that side, then I'd just kind of be able to chill and, push him off, uh, throw myself at him, and take that point pretty easily. So I figured that was going to give me good odds that I get at least one, if not both of the sides. He went kind of similarly, so like I said, he had Blade on the right side, he had Black Cat on the left, and then of course he had Hulk and Ghost Rider down the middle. So I don't think it was my first play. I think I actually did Iron Man first, but then I ended up having Cap kind of go and boldly stand towards that middle book. Um, and he did end up going with Immortal Hulk. I think he didn't pick up his back book with Immortal Hulk. He basically double moved him onto the point, and then he threw the size four at Cap. Cap blocked only one, so he ended up taking four damage out of that, which was a little rough, but kind of what I was expecting. I was not expecting Cap to survive for particularly long there. I just was kind of hoping he would at least draw enough attention away that it could make my opponent make some misplays early on. Then I threw up Cage, so I'd have access to things like Heroes for Hire and stuff like that. I think Cage might have been the one who grabbed my back book. I'm not 100% sure there. But yeah, I think Cage probably was the next one to go. And he just kind of stood on the middle and existed, threatening Heroes for Hire and stuff like that. And then he went ahead and went with Ghost Rider. He slightly mispositioned Ghost Rider. I think he was just out on his own Montesi. I think it might have not been an option though. I'm pretty sure he measured it out and wasn't quite able to be on Montesi and within range of Steve. So he did his move and then he did his range three attack on a Steve. And I did have the power to Vibranium, and thankfully Steve managed to block really, really well for that attack. So Steve ended up surviving round one, and then he ended up just having Black Cat run over to the middle because at this point he wanted to make sure he had some extra bodies on the middle to contest it and tie things up. I had Carol walk up, try to blast Black Cat, get some early damage on her, hopefully. I think I might have done one or two damage, but the important thing was I got the pursuit, so I also had Black Cat standing on the middle. So we tied the middle point there. And then for Blade on the right side of the board, he unfortunately, because he hadn't, done what he had wanted to do and dropped my book, he needed to have Blade go and take his own back book for him. So that left me to take both of the side points, which ended up kind of letting me score up a little bit round one, which was nice. So I took a little bit of a lead right from the start there, and then a lot of the game was just me trying to push that basically. I decided pretty much from the start, I was like, okay, Carol is, or not Carol, Black Cat is priority number one, so I dazed her relatively early on. And then priority number two was Blade. And the reasoning for that, of course, being Cat's going to throw out staggers and she's going to be stealing objectives and running, and that's going to be a problem if I go behind. And then Blade is a little bit of a softer target than Ghost Rider or uh, Immortal Hulk, obviously. So I figured I'd try to take him out, kill the leadership. He is, lower energy defense. He was the book carrier, that sort of thing. So I had some tools to deal with him. And yeah, it went pretty well for me. Steve and Cage both did a really good job at just kind of surviving. Steve did end up going down very early in the second round, and I think Hulk ended up picking up that book, which was a little unfortunate because obviously there's not much that my list could do about that short of taking down Hulk, which I didn't really feel like I was super well equipped to do. But um, basically, I ended up playing kind of the I'm going to keep this secures, I'm going to push this little lead that I have as much as I can. Ghost Rider at one point tried to go over and contest Black Panther, and Panther basically just told him to get out of here. Did some damage to him, not nothing too crazy. I think like one or two at this point. I really hadn't been hitting him that hard because I figured there was no point in powering him or Immortal Hulk up any more than I needed to. But I did manage to take down Cat in the second round, and I think it was either the second or third round when I ended up dropping Blade as well and stealing his book as well. So going into kind of some of the later rounds, I ended up taking Cat off the table. She was roughly in the middle, and I basically just downed her as quickly as I could. If not round three, then I definitely had her by round four. So I think it was round three though. I think I was able to have um, I don't even remember who it would have been. Probably Carol. Because I know Carol basically somewhere around round three, she went binary and she never left. She had a really good turn where I think she did take Cat off the table, a combination of spender and a throw, and then I think she's also the one who dazed Blade for the first time, and then of course she picks up the book, so now she's a target, and then he punched her with Immortal Hulk, and I think he ended up taking her down between Immortal Hulk and Ghost Rider, but she put up one heck of a fight before she did go down. Um, and so, he spent most of his activations just trying to deal with my five threat, who was also killing a couple of his models, and then things flip up, and he basically is like, okay, well, Blade is gonna run off to the corner of the map because he's gonna pick up another book. And then Ghost Rider did similar. I think Blade like took got the final hit on Carol or something like that at the start of the next round. Um, so he took a book and basically ran for it. Got a spender on his way and stuff like that. So he started running off towards the corner, and then he had Ghost Rider kind of go up and follow him because Ghost Rider also managed to take a book at some point. I think Ghost Rider might have gotten. I don't even know whose Ghost Rider would have had. Um, but either way, two of the books basically started floating over towards. Maybe it was Cage's because I think I said Cage picked up my initial book. Ghost Rider and Blade started floating kind of towards the back, and then one of the really key moments here was I basically sent Carol after them because she's got tons of mobility when she's binary. She's got the free charge, reign three with the place and stuff like that. So dice went really wonky here because basically what happened was at this point in time, Ghost Rider's on his flip side, and I have no interest in actually finishing him off. Although I have taken Cat off the table, so it's still valuable to finish him off. And we go into it's a pretty much a fresh round. And this was the round that Blade ran away. It was Ghost Rider, I think, ran first. And then Carol goes and chases, and she's not quite in range to get that eight dice energy on Blade, but Blade at this point has taken a couple damage as well. So she throws the eight dice Warbird into Ghost Rider, and the way things work out, I leave him on exactly one damage after the throw because I threw him at Blade, and that leaves Blade on two health. So I have enough power for another Warbird, and I have enough power to throw again. But we're in a weird, awkward situation here where if I kill Ghost Rider with whatever I'm using to kill Blade, if Ghost Rider dies first or um, I didn't want to get into the simultaneous stuff, so I didn't try to figure out what would happen if I just threw Ghost Rider at Blade again. But if Ghost Rider dies first, what he could do is basically deal with the devil off of Blade. So Blade would still technically die, but Ghost Rider would be coming back with full health and still unactivated, which wasn't ideal for me. I did want to take both if I could. So I went for the Warbird into Blade, but what needed to happen was I needed to get enough damage to kill him, but not trigger the explosive. And what I realized here is I could have done this slightly better, and I could have just placed myself um, within two of Blade, so I could have guaranteed this. But I didn't think that far ahead. I kind of realized what the game state was after we'd already done the throws and the places, so I wasn't going to go back on it there. And so I had to use the range 3 on a Blade, and um, I did exactly what I needed to do. I killed Blade, and I didn't get the crit wild explosive trigger, so I didn't deal the 1 damage to Ghost Rider, which would have happened before Blade died, and it would have just been uh, not terrible necessarily. Like the game was definitely still in my favor. At this point, I had more points on the board already than he did. I think I was looking at like 15 or something like that. Um, but it would have been a little awkward because he would have had more opportunity for a comeback because obviously Ghost Rider would have still been around. Because of course what happens after this is I take down Blade and then I don't get to place off him, which is all fine because I am still right beside Ghost Rider, so I pick up Ghost Rider and I throw him into a pole and Ghost Rider dies now too. And I mean, he could choose to deal with the devil into Immortal Hulk, but Immortal Hulk hasn't even gone yet. He's in the middle of the board where it's actually relevant. So obviously, he doesn't choose to do that. And then Immortal Hulk does have a good time. Immortal Hulk, very handily, I think, takes Cage either. I think it has to have been off the board. That's throwing me off though because I feel like I'm missing a book somewhere in here. But because I do feel like I remember Cage still being relevant after this, so I don't remember exactly what happens. Maybe it was Iron Man. Maybe he dummied Iron Man this round, but he dummies somebody, and then I was basically like, well, looking at the game state, I basically have this no matter what. But Hulk is holding a book, so if I can down Hulk, I can pick up that extra book, and that's 1 extra point for me. So I basically decided to throw my entire team at Hulk. Didn't quite do it. I ended up leaving him alive on like 4 health or something like that, which fair. I'd only done maybe 2 damage into him before all of this, so didn't really expect to get him. But I did basically end up taking down his entire team except for Hulk off the table, so that was pretty cool. And then obviously I scored the game after that, so that was the game. So that was a fun game. Cal's a great opponent. I played against him before. He's always a fun game, so it was a good time. And then we went into round 2 where I played against David Vino. So my second game was into David. I played against him a couple times in the past, and he was running Weapon X today. So he went for X-23 as his leader, and we were playing Mutant Extremists and Intrusions. Unfortunately, I don't think he's uploaded a list today, so I can't show what he was running. But we can talk about it real quick. That's not mine. That's mine. There we go. So yeah, so for the 19 here, I was running, I think I was running Steve here. Yeah, Steve Rogers. And let me think real quick. So I had Steve, I had Carol, that's 9. We were playing 19. I had Cage and Tony again. Oh, you know what? I ran the exact same list. That's what it was. So yeah, Cage, Tony, Black Panther, Steve, and Carol. On his side, he had Logan, Sabretooth, X-23 as kind of his core there. Then he had Mystique because he was playing Deception. And let me think for a second who his last model was because I know. Oh, right, it was Ultron, new Ultron with the grunts because yeah he did a lot that game. So the game started out pretty well for me. On the left side, I deployed Black Panther facing off against Logan, which I was relatively happy with that matchup. I think it works relatively in Panther's favor, at least when he's on his healthy side. Then on the right side, it was Luke Cage and X-23, and then everyone else was just kind of towards the middle because the Senators. So there's 6 of those. Um, and everything was going pretty well for me in the first round. It was intrusions, obviously, so I wanted to try and get that middle point as much as I could because that was kind of going to be the swing point. And things worked out pretty well. I had Iron Man was kind of my sacrificial lamb to Mystique, so I had him go and grab my first senator, but I was hoping Iron Man would be in a bulky enough model that would be okay, and then I'd move up Cage to be able to Heroes for Hire, hopefully after that. So um, he ends up doing the smart thing. He deceptions kind of away from where Cage was, so Cage wasn't going to be able to do that, which made a lot of sense. And then Mystique ends up putting 4 damage into him by herself, which was really rough for a start there, because that was just a single pistol shot and then obviously rapid fire, but into 4 dice with reduction. Was not looking forward to taking 4 dice on the first round there, but is what it is. So basically, everyone else moves up and to grab some of the points. And thankfully, because he needed to finish off Iron Man still, he ended up kind of having some of his models focus more on doing that and less on scoring the actual center. So Sabretooth, I think he moved up and he tried to hit. Actually, I don't know what he ended up doing. He might have had to double move to get his senator. I'm not 100% sure because I guess, yeah, small base medium move I think has to double move for senators, doesn't it? Um, I could be wrong about that, but I don't remember him making any attacks that turn, so I don't remember quite what he did otherwise. Ultron, however, did move the grunts up. They shot Iron Man, and he survived that. And then Ultron goes up, and goes to shoot him himself, and Iron Man somehow survived that as well. So Iron Man's looking like he's in a pretty good state, because the only thing he has left on that side of the board that can really deal with him would be X-23, but then he's giving up the side point where Luke Cage was contesting, so obviously that wasn't great for him either way. Um, so that was looking good for me. I had put Steve right in the middle, so I was actually scoring the middle point, whereas he wasn't able to get anyone onto it. And then over on the left side, things went exactly how I wanted them to. Basically, he moved up Logan onto that point because I had anti prio, so I had last call. And then I basically move up Panther. I threw myself at Logan, did like 1 or 2 damage to him, nothing too crazy, and then I punched him, which automatically throws him off of the point. So that was nice. I ended up scoring both of those, and we went something like 5-3 in the first round. But basically, starting in the second round, things started slowing down a little bit for me. Oh, I also had Carol contesting the middle, I think, because I think she actually was the one who contested it, not Steve. She moved up and she took a shot at, I think, Sabretooth, because I decided I wanted to deal with Sabretooth as early as I could. And then I actually, if I remember correctly, did really well with her. She did something like 3 damage, and she got the pursuit. So she pursued it, and she picked up a senator and the middle point, of course. So that was quite solid. And she was looking at a pretty decent amount of power going into the next round. The next couple rounds are a little foggy to me, but basically what happened was in the second round, a bunch of models started dropping. I think Sabretooth dropped here. I don't think Luke Cage quite dropped yet. But Iron Man definitely went down this round, which was to be expected because obviously he had been starting the round on 1 health. I think uh, Panther and Logan basically had a bit of a standstill there. X-23 was pretty much, I think she started moving in towards the middle this round. Or like she teleported in or something like that off of the portal. But I don't think she was hugely relevant this round. And then Carol did pretty good things. I think she actually, if I remember correctly, this was the round. Basically, Carol got punched by someone. I don't remember who. Maybe Sabretooth. Which powered her up to be able to go binary. So she went binary and she blew up Mystique. And then she actually, I think, was the one who finished off Sabretooth. So she did a lot of work for me. Um, Ultron, if I remember correctly, at this point in time, wasn't able to do all that much. He helped put some of my models off of points, but I had a lot of cards in tech to stay alive from him, so he didn't do anything particularly crazy. And it ended up being a low scoring round for both of us. I think both of us got like kind of shoved off of a lot of points, and we dropped a handful of senators. I think Steve might have went down this round. It feels a little early, but I don't remember exactly when it happened. But either way, a handful of models dropped on both sides, and we both ended up only scoring like 2 points that round, so it was nothing particularly crazy either way. And then going into the third round, things continued going relatively well for me. Carol got punched a few more times after. I think she actually might have ended up dropping that round after she'd taken out Mystique. I think that might have been what Ultron mainly did, was dropped Carol. And then what Carol ended up doing in the next round, she woke up. She said, "All right, Mystique didn't want to play this game anyways, so she's out." And at this point, I'd plinked a couple of damage onto Ultron just from like some passive side effects and some throws and things like that. So I was like, you know what? Let's try and deal with Ultron as well. Um, or no, she didn't do Ultron actually. She put a bunch of hits into Sabretooth if I remember correctly, because I really wanted to deal with Sabretooth this round. And then actually, am I mixing things up? Because I know she took Mystique off the table. Oh no, she took Mystique off the table afterwards. Sorry, my apologies. I actually had Iron Man start me out this round because he was in a bit of a perilous position. He was obviously surrounded by enemies, and I actually started him out with not a ricochet blast, a unibeam. Just basically, I was able to hit Sabretooth, Ultron, and Logan with the Unibeam. Logan, who obviously was on the side point fighting Panther, was just kind of perfectly positioned for it. And Logan was also down to 2 health at this point in time, so it was kind of convenient for me. And the Unibeam ends up doing really well. It was a Friday eyed one, obviously, so I had a good amount of dice. It, I think, did a decent chunk of damage into Sabretooth. Nothing insane, but like a couple damage, so solid. It did 3 or 4 damage to Ultron, which left him on 3 life remaining, and it finished off Logan. So it was a really solid Unibeam. And then basically at this point, I was like, well, I could Friday AI and do a 6 dice repulsor into Ultron to try and take him out, or Sabretooth, or either one. Or I could use Ricochet Blast, and it did its job. I wasn't able to. Um, so the logic on Ricochet Blast was I wanted to keep one power open so I could pick up a Senator after this, so I decided to not Friday eye the Ricochet Blast because it was still 7 dice full rerolls, which is still better than a Repulsor Blast. And I threw that into Ultron and I managed to take him down. So Ultron got dazed that round, and of course I was not planning on hitting him again after this because he did have Age of Ultron, so he was coming back if I did. So Ultron goes down. Iron Man picks up some objectives. Sabretooth's still standing. I think Sabretooth then went and maybe this was the round he got Cage. Not 100% sure. I know at some point Cage kind of gravitated over towards that side of the board, but he does a decent amount of work with Sabretooth, nothing too crazy. I think it was mostly damage. I don't think he really killed any activations or anything like that. And then Carol comes out and she takes what's her name? Mystique's activation off the board. I think does some more damage into Sabretooth, and it's another round that's looking really, really good for my team. So I end up scoring up to something like 10 points here, give or take. So I think I scored another like 3 or 4 this round, 10 or 11. I went to. And then we go into the next round, and he starts out with Ultron, and Ultron basically looks at Carol, who is sitting on 4 health remaining, and is like, okay, I'm going to throw this size 3 building at you. And Carol whips the defense roll, and she dies. Brace was burned on something earlier. I don't remember what it was, but Brace had been used at this point, I think probably on one of the Sabretooth ones. So Carol dies, which was really unfortunate because it was off the table dead. And then he also basically just kind of looks at Steve and he's like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to throw a 6 dice attack at you. And this was where things started really getting swingy. He throwed 5 crits and a hit. And those 5 crits exploded into like a couple more. So it wasn't actually that impressive at the end of the day, but it was still starting out, 6 successes, 5 of which are crits. And of course it is Steve on his flip side, so he's got good defensive tech, and I Vibranium shielded, and I did end up surviving on I think actually 2 health because it was Vibranium shield, counting blanks, and I had cover because at this point I'd kind of gravitated over, so I was on top of a building, and so he does survive, but it's not looking too great for him. And then he goes and he throws an attack into I want to say it was either Cage or Iron Man here. I think Cage actually. And not only does this take down Cage, but it also he throws him at Cap, and Cap goes down as well. So both of these models drop. Suddenly, I'm 3 activations down. All I have left is Panther and um, no, it can't have been Cage. It had to have been Iron Man. So suddenly all I have left is Panther and Iron Man, and things are really looking not great. I do have the points lead, but at this point, I'm looking at the board and I'm like, oh shoot, all of a sudden he's going to table me because I haven't been able to take enough things off the board. So I end up going with Panther, and I finally have Panther go over towards kind of the middle of the board. He picks up a Senator, and I think he actually takes out Sabretooth on his way. I like either threw him at Sabretooth or maybe I was able to do it in one of my activations before this. I don't remember exactly what happened to Sabretooth, but I know he did come off the table somewhere around here. And basically I start having Panther and Cage run away together because they just need to, I looked at the board and I looked at the math and was like, okay, if I score 2 points this round, and then next round, I get them both onto a point or something like that. I can have game here. It's just not, I need dice to suddenly be okay for me again because at this point Panther had also been flipped. I think he ended up sending X-23 across the map to deal with Panther. So Panther and Cage both on their injured side, but both have pretty good health still. I think they were both at pretty much full. Cage might have taken one or two at this point. And I still had Heroes for Hire online, so I had a little bit of insurance policy from that as well. So they start running away and just trying to hold on to their points, and then I'm figure, I'll bring them back on and I'll make sure I sort of score a secure next round, but I don't need to score a secure this round. I don't really want to give him the opportunity to portal over to me yet. So they're running away. I've got all my defensive tech, and then Logan comes after them, and Logan's only going to get one attack off here because it's going to have to be a spender and or not a spender, but he's gonna have to move for it rather. And actually, if I remember correctly, Logan wasn't even able to get in this round. Logan didn't end up getting in until the next round. So Logan like double moves towards them. X-23 I think moves in and maybe chips a little bit of damage on Panther. I know Panther was in a worse state than Cage going into the next round. So we go into the next round and I basically decide like Panther is no condition to even last the round, let alone get myself onto a point. So once again, this was where I scored to 12, and I look at the board state and I'm just kind of like, okay, so I don't think I actually win on 16 here, but we're going into round six soon, and if I can just survive and lead him off of the secures this round, he's not going to be able to catch up to me on points. Um, so that's what I tried to do. I had Panther basically run away, stay within three of Cage, but get as far away as possible. Um, but then he has Logan come in, and basically Logan pretty much one shots Cage, I think, on his front side or on his injured side rather. So Cage is pretty much out of it. Or he like survived on one or something. I don't remember exactly how the numbers worked out, but then he sends in Ultron and the grunts, and they just clean up. Everyone ends up dying, and he tables me 12 to 9 in points in my favor, but game state in his. So that was that game, and one of the very few times I've been tabled in a tournament, which was interesting. So yeah, after that we'll be into round three. So in round three, for anyone who watched the previous one from last week, I was up against Kyle here, and Kyle's Web Warriors took top table from me in last week's tournament recap. So of course, then I was forced into Black Order because it was a themed Heroes versus Villains event. So this time I was playing my actual main list into him, and as you can see, the score was a lot closer here. It was a really tight game, and it really came down to a few key die rolls. So, of course, he was playing Webs, I was playing. I decided to go with Sam Wilson Avengers because I figured Sam would be a little bit better for chasing him down. I didn't think Steve himself was actually going to do really anything in that matchup, so I figured Sam would be better there. And this is really one of those rounds that I wish I had pictures of because it was a really tight round. There's some really good plays, and unfortunately, my memory of it's only so good. So. We were playing Virus and Scoundrels. I of course went for my blues because I had Prio, and I got the one that I really didn't want because I figured the other two would have been pretty much actively bad for him. So we got Scoundrels, which wasn't great for me. And then we got Virus though, which I think out of all the extracts we could have gotten was probably one of the better ones for me. So I'll win some, you lose some. And my list ended up being, let's see. So he didn't end up posting his, so I can't go off of his there. But I did bring, so obviously Sam. I had Gwen, my own Gwen there. I had Iron Man. So let's see, that's 6, 9. I had Hulk, which brings me to 15. And then I had Black Panther, so 19 threat there. Over on his side, he ended up going 6 wide, so he had Toad, Miles, Gwen, so that's 8. He had Amazing Spider-Man up to 13. He had Black Cat up to 16. And who was his last model? Right, Mystique, because he was also playing a Deception list. So round one was really interesting because obviously Mystique and Webs is a really interesting piece. So basically, I deployed Panther off towards or Panther and Iron Man on the right side, um, and he had Toad and I want to say Black Cat on that side facing off against them. Somehow my Panther always faces off against Black Cat. Then towards the middle, I think I had who did I go for the middle? I think it was just Hulk. I think I just had Hulk going towards the middle. And he had Amazing Spider-Man because Amazing Spider-Man obviously is a safe grab on midlines. And then over on the left side, I had Gwen and Sam, and he had Gwen and Miles and Mystique. Mystique was a little bit towards the middle too, so she could have done either, but um, she ended up being mostly towards the left. So I ended up going with, I think I went with Panther first, um, because he felt relatively safe on that side of the board. He was furthest away from Mystique, and also just the models over there didn't seem like they punched all that hard, so I figured he wouldn't be punished for that midline grab. So he went and he grabbed the right side Legacy Virus. And then he went with Amazing Spider-Man, did a safe grab on the middle and backed up over towards the left side. And then this was where I was like, well, I can't let him just have that other point. So I figured between Gwen and Sam, Sam was a little bit bulkier. So I had Sam go grab the middle line point, and then my idea was if the opportunity came up, I would have Gwen lifesaver him. Now, the important thing to note here, though, that was really, really influential this game was this was all everything on the left side was based around this massive size 5 building that was pretty much right where the extract was, but also my secure was on it. Um, and this building was a big problem for both of us, really, in a lot of ways. It was really annoying for things like pulls, and just Gwen in general had an awkward time playing around this building. So I wasn't able to really take full advantage of her. But basically, he went with Mystique and he deceptioned him, and I think Mystique ends up doing 1 or 2 damage to him, which sure. Um, and then I went with Gwen, put her onto that point. I think I tried to impact webbing Amazing Spider-Man to get him, maybe some early damage, but mostly just to give myself some power. So that was nice. And then he goes with Miles to try and deal with um, what's his name? My extract holder, Sam. Um, and he advanced did Miles and Gwen from his Mystique. So Miles was able to swing and do a big kick, and thankfully my defense dice were pretty hot with Sam here. So Sam does end up surviving that, but he does get the throw on both of his kicks, which ended up being a total of 2 extra damage, obviously. So he ends up getting Sam down to 1 health through this, which was a little problematic, but not the end of the world. And of course, he positioned everything so Gwen couldn't really have a say here. Um, and then, so after that, I think I waited on Hulk. I think I just had Iron Man walk over to the middle, and he was just out of range of Toad, which was unfortunate. And then on the left side, he ends up going with Gwen to try and finish off once again Sam. So he tries to finish off Sam on the left side, fails. It was just a 4 dicer, so it wasn't amazing odds to begin with. But then what he does is he gets the extra move, so he goes and contests my back point and pulls my Gwen off of it, which yeah, that makes sense. I end up just having Hulk basically walk over towards the middle because his Gwen was his final activation of the round, so I couldn't have really prevented it with my Hulk or anything. But I basically had my Hulk walk just to the middle of the board and just kind of sit there. I waited for Hulk for as long as possible, just because if he took out Sam, Hulk would have gotten a free advance and he would have been able to have a lot more influence on the first turn. But instead, he was going into the next round with 6 power, so that was kind of nice. Basically, after that, I don't wanna spend too much time because I kind of forgot a lot of the small details for this game, but I we ended up continuing to score kind of tied points after that for a little bit. Obviously, I had more extracts than him, but he denied one of my secures there. He obviously takes out Sam very quickly in the next round, but then I kind of had Hulk go up to that point, and Hulk did a bunch of work over there. Um, and Hulk ends up taking down, I think, Mystique and Miles that round, which was really nice. But Gwen and ASM make off with both of the legacy viruses, and they're just kind of hanging out on my back point at this point. My Gwen's trying to do some work, but she can't really get anything too crazy through. I'm slowly chipping away damage on his Gwen, which was valuable because it was forcing him to play really cagey with his Gwen, but I couldn't quite finish the kill. So I'm doing okay over there. I end up sending Panther that way too, just because he's a long mover, so he can actually get over there and influence the game. So I send him over there to help contest my own back point to stop him from stealing it from me. But thankfully, I do have Hulk stealing his back point now, so that's not bad. And then I end up sending Iron Man over towards the middle point as well because he's going to be more relevant there. He failed to get in range of Toad because unfortunately that was just the way that worked. So I think the round two, he ends up just taking a like 5 dicer at Toad and doing pretty much nothing. And then round three, he is when he moves to the middle. And Iron Man was really disappointing this game. He just kind of sat in the middle, occasionally got to shoot something, and pretty much never got the push or anything like that. So I think throughout the entire game, he really didn't end up doing anything of any actual consequence. I mean, he stood on a couple points, so he scored me, 3 or 4 points by the time the game ended, which I guess was valuable, but he really didn't do as much as literally anyone else on the team did, which was unfortunate. He ends up having a really good all webbed up turn as well with Miles. When he wakes up, I think he all webs up and he gets pretty much everyone on my team except Iron Man at this point because I moved Black Panther over there. And this was where he basically was like, okay, you don't get to have a leadership this game, so he took Sam off the table before anyone else, which was pretty important there. Obviously, it was under all webbed up, so I didn't really expect Sam to survive super long, but was still disappointing there. And then he also was able to start getting staggers out because he also moved Black Cat over to this side of the table now. So he'd staggered Hulk, and for the rest of the game, Hulk was on one action. So that was really annoying, but obviously kind of expected when you're playing against the Black Cat and with a Hulk. So that was a thing. And yeah, the all webbed up turn was huge for him because it also slowed Black Panther down a lot. And now I have, Black Panther, who's one of his big things that he can do is he's really, really fast, is not only slowed, but he's also being slowed down by this massive building that he's got to play around. And that was a big deal. ASM was doing a lot of work here as well. He did a good chunk of damage into Black Panther, who at this point was my only extract carrier still. So obviously he was trying to take him down. And then this was also the round I think where he took down my Gwen, which was a big deal because my Gwen was obviously trying to deal with his Gwen at this point. So yeah, my Gwen ends up going down somewhere around this point in the game, and this being roughly round three I think here. And so he's sitting on two of the extracts still, and my Hulk didn't end up doing anything too crazy. I think he put me in a situation where I was basically forced to throw his Mystique off of the point. And then I leapt up to try and deal with his ASM, but unfortunately I didn't end up getting anything. I no matter the cost it into the spender, so I'd have the dice online for the 8 dice, or I'd have the extra die online for so to make it a 9 dice, increase the odds on everything a little bit more. But unfortunately, on top of blocking everything, I also didn't manage to get the wild trigger. I only ended up rolling like 2 hits or something. So no trigger, no throw, no stagger. So nothing I could do to finish off Gwen. Panther at this point I think might have already activated and either whiffed his attacks or just didn't end up doing what he needed to do. I don't remember exactly what Panther did this round. I know he didn't end up going down, so I don't know what he was doing, but he spent a lot of this turn not really doing anything of any consequence. Um, and then going into round four, I think maybe he took down or Black Cat actually. I think he might have taken down Black Cat on this round. Um, but going into the next round, basically he has Cat. He's got his own Gwen in a corner at this point on 1 health. And Cat steals Panther's extract and then also goes and runs to hang out there. So I'm running out of options here. ASM is a problem. Now he's moved Toad across the board to go sit on one of those extra or one of those secures that I was kind of ignoring on the right side of the board. And here once again, Iron Man is kind of failing me. Iron Man tries to fry the Toad, fails to fry the Toad, and just kind of calls it a day because he's having to move for pretty much anything at this point. Um, Mystique, I don't remember exactly what she was doing of any major relevance. I think she might have just moved on back to his back point again. And then I ended up sending Hulk after, using Avengers Assemble. I sent Hulk after Gwen and Cat, but unfortunately, he's just out of being able to get in on Gwen, and he doesn't have the power left to throw Cat after this. So he basically just finishes off Cat, picks up her extract, but at this point, he's still got two of them. So I'm relying on some big swings across the table still. Um, and ASM just runs to another point. Panther at this point is still slowed, so he can't actually chase. So he's not really useful here. And we go into the final round, and I'm basically looking at the board, and it's like, okay, well, I need to deal with Gwen, which isn't hard to do because I have models to do that, but also somehow I need to deal with ASM, preferably Toad, and Mystique, who's sitting on a point again. And this is kind of more than I have the bodies to do at this point, especially since some of them are still slowed. Panther, I think actually now that I think about it, I think that round was dedicated to maybe that round he also was trying to kill Cat. I don't entirely remember, but I don't think he did anything of major consequence. I still have Helios up at this time, but my entire team's kind of power starved. Gwen thankfully is awake again, but she doesn't quite have the power to do anything of or no, she has tons of power. I wanted to save most of it for Helios. I didn't because I ended up trying to kill his Gwen with her. So what I do is I pull him in and I go for a spender and I do take down his Gwen, but of course she spent a bunch of her power for that. So I pick up the extract off of his Gwen using mine, and I think Hulk just kind of was like, well, he's gonna come back towards the middle now because he has to. Um, so Hulk wasn't going to be able to do anything major this round. I don't entirely remember the order of operations on this. I think actually this might have been the same round that Hulk took out Black Cat. But basically, I knew I was in this awkward state of I needed to kill ASM and I didn't have the firepower to do it because he was holding an extract and scoring him a secure, and he was worth basically enough points for him to take the game by himself. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to throw enough dice at him, so I was like, well, maybe the alternative here is I deal with Toad if I can kill Toad because he's a much softer target. And then I just kind of walk someone like Panther to go contest, Mystique or whoever, and we go from there. And unfortunately, I failed to get either the push or the damage I need on Toad with Iron Man. And at this point, I just kind of was like, all right, well, we'll move our models onto their final positions, but this is game. And as it turned out, Black Panther wasn't going to be able to chase Mystique anyways, because of course he was still slowed at this point. So he could have just went across the board, which is what he ended up doing. So he scores to 17. I scored a 15. Super close game though. The round before Gwen actually killed his Gwen, she did a double builder into her and did absolutely nothing off of it, which was really unfortunate. Because like I said, his Gwen ended up surviving on one. So that second builder, of course, being a 7 dice with Gwen, If that had swung a little different my way, it would have been potentially a tie game going into the next round, and that could have been a big deal because we both kind of knew at that board state that at this point in time I would have had more objectives than he did as far as extracts are concerned, as well as just more models on the board that can influence the board. Obviously, with some of his models being stuff like Toad, and Mystique, who at this point had kind of already done her job, so there was going to be a little bit of an advantage going my way if I had been able to force another round, but unfortunately not quite. So that ended up going to Kyle, and props to him because he is a fantastic Web Warriors player and he knows what he's doing with them. So it was a really good game though, really really tight, and I look forward to the next time I get to play against him. So that was my round four, and then into round or that was round three into round four. So round four, of course, was the final round of the event here, and at this point, I'm just trying to go even. I've lost two games. I wanna catch it up a little bit, go 2-2 if I can. And I got paired into Matt Clark, and Matt Clark was actually coming up from the States, I believe. Yeah, coming up from the States for this event, which was kind of cool. And he was bringing Avengers as well, so I was a little spooked by his list because it looked really really good. And he was bringing Sam, so exclusively Sam as his leader here, but a lot of really really solid models in here. And the list is on the screen if you guys want to pause or anything like that, feel free to. But he had a really really solid list, so I was definitely scared of some of the stuff in there. But of course, I'm been playing Avengers for a long time, so I'm very familiar with most of those models as well, and I am relatively comfortable in the matchup. Of course, I don't really have anyone in my local meta that actually plays Avengers other than myself, so while I'm very comfortable with what all of these models do, I don't have that much experience against them. So I knew it was going to be an interesting one, and then we pulled Scenario, and we ended up getting Struggle and Gamma, which was really interesting as well. Obviously, Struggle supporting kind of Sam a little bit more, but Gamma being a really interesting one for a lot of the models in my list. And of course, he also had a Dynamo, so I knew this was going to be a really, really unique game. So we ended up going into our lists, and we both brought fairly similar lists, with obviously a few notable exceptions. He was being, Sam led, and I was being Steve led. So my list, um, who was I bringing here? So I wanted to go very, very bulky. There was a temptation to just go Steve, Hulk, and Carol, but I knew he was going to have stuff like Dynamo, and I figured that was going to be a little miserable if I wasn't able to deal with Dynamo very, very quickly. So I ended up going with Steve, Panther, my own Dynamo, and Luke Cage. So a very, very bulky list. Um, and my goal here was basically what my goal usually is on something like Gamma is just kind of outlast, shove him off the points, score at least parity with Struggle for the Cube, and take the middle secure as often as I could. That was the goal, and I felt like I had a good chance of making that work. And then for his list, he of course brought Sam. He also brought Dynamo and Cage. So that's bringing him up to 10 threat right there. For his remaining 5 threat, he had Widow. And who was his other 3 threat? I'm going to think about this one for just a second. Right, his other 3 threat was Lizard. So we both kind of had a similar game plan in the very early rounds. So I was okay with him taking the middle cube. The way deployment kind of worked out and just the models that I had available to me, I knew the models that I had that I wanted to be able to do things turn one, didn't want to have to move to the middle. I only had two models that didn't really care to do anything turn one, so it was either I take my side cubes or I try to take the middle one. I ended up being kind of, I was okay with him taking the middle one if it meant I was going to be able to double tap someone there because I noticed he didn't have any safe grabs open to him. So basically, what I ended up trying to do round one was turn one, I took Cage and I grabbed my side point and I just basically walked him over to the middle just to put a model there to contest. He had very little in the way of things that could shove me off round one, outside of, like a shield throw or if he decided to walk and attack instead of double walk onto the point. But again, in all of these cases, he's not putting his own model there, so I'm okay with it. And then he ended up doing something quite similar. I think he had Lizard grab one and then go stand on the middle as well. And I was like, all right, this is fine. I wanted to wait a little bit longer, see what else he was going to put there. So I had Captain America grab my side point, and then walk to my back shelter just because I wanted to have someone there. And I figured Captain America was weirdly enough the more long range character on the team here. So Cap was sitting on my back point, holding a cube. My cage was in the middle. And then I think this was where he put his cage up to the middle as well. So his cage walks to the middle and is contesting. And of course, at this point, he has more models than me, but I'm not too worried here. So I end up going with Black Panther next, and of course I walk up and then I pounce, and I pounced into his cage. I was very specifically trying to deal damage to nobody other than Cage here, because I knew if I put any damage on, he'd have access to Heroes for Hire, and that could be really dangerous turn one on a situation like this. So I didn't want to give him anything like that, so I threw myself at Cage, and then I punched Cage, and I think I ended up doing maybe 3 damage to him, more likely two. Um, but I have the auto push, so I shoved him away, and that was kind of that. I made sure to keep him relatively close so that if I wanted to do things with Dynamo, I could. But at the end of the day, I was mostly concerned with getting him out of taunt range and off of the point. Then he ends up double moving Widow onto the point as well. So at this point, I'm faced with kind of an interesting choice here because I have Dynamo left, and my options were kind of either. At this point, he'd also put Sam on his back point, so his only activation left after this was, I want to say, who did I say his last model was? Let me think about this for a second. Right, he had Dynamo left, of course. That makes sense. So basically, I figured, if I kill Black Widow with Dynamo, then the best case scenario for him is he ties the point by double moving Dynamo, which doesn't feel great. The other awkward part about this was the way models were positioned. He might not have even been able to do that because Dynamo was really awkwardly positioned to even get up the board from Terrain and Sam kind of body blocking his path. And then to get onto the point from there would have also been awkward because Lizard and Panther were kind of in a weird body blocking position there. So I wasn't 100% sure if he was even going to be able to contest the point, which was good for me, obviously. So I was kind of like, well, what I'll do is I'll thrust her up because I can do that for one under Steve, and then I'm just gonna blast Widow once. And if Widow survives but she takes some damage, then I'll probably just try to kill her. Or if she takes no damage, or if she just gets killed in one shot, then I'll walk onto the point and confirm that it's mine. So what I ended up doing was I actually lined up my shot to also hit Lizard, but in order to do that, I was also going to plink Panther for 1 damage, and I kind of figured it was worth it. So I threw the 5 dice down. I ended up doing 1 or 2 damage to Lizard, I think. And then I did, I think, 1 or 2 damage to Widow as well. I want to say one. And then I was really thinking about, do I move to get on the point, confirm that it's mine, or do I try to take out Widow, which would also confirm that it's mine? Or at least tied worst case scenario because he did still have Lizard there. And I was kind of like, you know what, we're gonna hit Widow again because if we can daze Widow early on, that'll probably be a big deal for the later game. And thank God I did because it ended up being very relevant that Widow was not a healthy character. So I ended up going to Beamer again because I am at the perfect range. I'm outside of range two, so she's only looking at 2 dice. I'm looking at five. Odds are pretty good that I do damage. She had a really good defense roll in the first one, and I had a very mediocre attack roll, which is why I didn't do much to her. But the second one, I do succeed. I take her off or not off the table, but I do daze her around one, which is really nice. And then unfortunately, he forgot his leadership trigger, and I didn't remember either until the next round, so it was a little too late at that point. But that was a little unfortunate because that definitely could have saved him the middle point that round at least. But thankfully, she wasn't an extract carrier or anything like that, so it wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah, that's what Dynamo ends up doing, and then his Dynamo ends up moving up. I think he might have ended up having to double move him, but I think he got a shot off, and just unfortunately wasn't able to get anything significant through. I think maybe he did 1 damage to my Dynamo. I'm pretty sure he was forced to choose between Dynamo or Panther, or not Dynamo, Panther or Cage. But if he wanted to hit both, he would have been hitting Lizard for more, and Lizard had already taken a couple of damage at this point, so he didn't want to risk it, which was understandable. So that was round one. I ended up scoring the middle point as well as he did technically get more extracts than me. I think his cage took the middle one. So we ended up tying the first round, but I was in a decent position attrition wise in a game that was sure to be a bit of a slog for attrition just because we both had such bulky teams and access to tools like Dynamo. So there was a lot of stuff there that was kind of in my favor in that regard. So basically, I started out round two with my own dynamo, and I decided to thruster myself over to a position where not only was I contesting the point, but I also had four models in the beam, which was really, really nice this early in the game. So I go ahead and I make that beam, and that beam is hitting. Let me think about this for a second. So it was hitting Dynamo, Sam, Luke Cage, and Lizard, I think were the models in this. So the only one excluded from this beam was Widow. And of course, I'm not that worried about Widow at this point because she is on her injured side, so she's not going to be doing anything of major consequence as far as objectives go. And, a couple of four dicers here and there, especially with access to something like Dynamo, means she's probably not even getting the stagger or anything like that. Means she's really not going to be that relevant for this round. And I end up rolling really, really hot. He does go for a Heroes for Hire play on Sam, just to try and prevent him from being shocked, which was a good play. Um, he throws me out, I think, my Luke Cage, and does a couple damage to each of them, or one to Dynamo and maybe one or two to Cage. Nothing too crazy, but it does prevent Sam from being shocked. But the rest of his team does get shocked, as well as a good amount of damage spread across them. But no, most notably, his Dynamo is shocked at this point, which is huge, so he's going to have a harder time doing it to me. I've also put myself within range 3 of his Dynamo, so even better in that regard. And then I just go for it again, just to try and plink some damage out. I got some pretty solid damage across his team. Still don't get the shock on Sam, unfortunately, but I do get everyone else, so it was pretty good, and just a little bit of plink here and there. Um, the details of the round get kind of foggy there. Obviously, I know that was how I started out, but after this, it was a lot of, I'm gonna use the rerolls thing to make sure nothing happens. So there was a lot of kind of dead activations. He does end up getting a shock out on my Black Panther, which unfortunate, but it is what it is. There's nothing really I can do about that. And Panther is at the end of the day the only model on this table that's actually that good at punching things. So like even with a shock, he's still probably the best aggressive model on the table here. So that was still a point in my favor. I think I ended up taking out Lizard this round. It wasn't Dynamo that did it, I don't think, but might have been Cage, might have been Panther. I'm not 100% sure. Might have been some combination of the two. Actually, I'm a complete liar. I remember who it was. It was Steve Rogers throwing a shield from the back. I threw a couple shields at him. I'd already put some damage onto him. I think he was down to one or two health at this point, but I threw a couple shields at him to finish him off. Bounced one of them into Sam as well, so got some good damage there. And basically just kind of started trying to really push that early kind of attrition lead that I'd got in this game that, like I said, was very sure to be something where attrition was going to be extremely valuable, but very, very hard to get because of all this defensive tech floating around. So obviously, Steve throwing shields from the back line who didn't have a shock or anything on him, unlike his Sam, unfortunately, who was throwing three dice shields. Um, or not at this point, but um, his other models, Lizard throwing three dicers, or his Dynamo only throwing four dice attacks, that sort of thing. So yeah, I end up taking down Lizard, drop his extract for I think I actually did drop it for Dynamo to be able to pick it up the next round, assuming nobody else did. Um, and then do some plink into Sam. Everyone else on my team just kind of again continued plinking. There was a lot of like here's one damage sort of thing for both of us. And by the end of this round, both of our teams are looking kind of rough. We're very beaten here. But the end of this round, one thing that was really important happened, and that was I think Cage ended up picking up a second cube and dazing himself in the cleanup phase, which meant he was going into the next round healthy, whereas a lot of his models were really looking rough going into that next round. So, um, yeah, that's basically where things kind of started swinging in my favor points wise here was We go into the next round, and I was able to just start knocking models off the table, or not off the table, but onto their injured side. So during the next round, I ended up finishing off Sam. I think I flipped Luke Cage, and um, I mean Widow was already flipped, and Lizard was already flipped at this point. So I think it was just those two. But that was a big deal because I was also putting out some damage on Dynamo, so we was starting to have to think about that, and just everything was kind of going my favor at this point. So yeah, I had good damage across the board. I had Panther in a really obnoxious position right up beside his back point. Now, unfortunately, the way things had worked out, I hadn't been able to get him contesting it because he was still healthy at this point in time, but he was also starting to feel a lot of pain. He was down to I think 2 health remaining. And he did a lot of the work finishing these models off as well. I think he threw himself into like Sam or something and did some extra punches here and there. He moved Widow over to his back point and also had Dynamo contesting his back point, so the middle point was still very handily mine. And I think at this point, Lizard also kind of moved himself back towards Steve, but he was still contesting the middle point, obviously. But because my Dynamo was still healthy, that point remained mine. So that was good for me. I used Indom, I think, to stop him from throwing some stuff around at this point as well, because he really didn't have that many throws, so I figured it was a good point. He was trying to finish off, I think, Dynamo with this, and Dynamo was just being an absolute workhorse, being within range 3 of pretty much everything on the board, pretty much all the time, was really, really good. And of course, the first one only costs 1 power, so he wasn't able to get his shocks out or anything like that most of the time. The only ones he really got out were mostly meaningless, or just the one on Panther, which was fine. Meanwhile, I'm starting to wail into Lizard here because Lizard's picked up another extract, so I just need to take this model off the table if I can. And it's Lizard's a annoying model to take off the table, but he's also not hitting particularly hard, so I don't mind powering him up. So going into the next round, I'd already plinked a little bit of damage into him, but basically I was just like, okay, Steve's gonna deal with you now because you're in range. So Steve double spenders him, leaves him on 1 health, and throws him away. This was being after he had activated this round because this was the round that he kind of moved back towards that point. So this is working. This is working fine for Steve here. And then the rest of the table, I think Panther ends up getting flipped this round. Um, don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure exactly when he got flipped. I know it did happen. But it definitely took a while because there was a lot of kind of just pillow attacks coming at him, which was solid. I kept kind of throwing Crimson Dynamo away, so he was forced to use a lot of his leadership procs on Crimson Dynamo just to kind of keep him in the game, which was valuable. But on the other hand, Crimson Dynamo also had access to that thruster, but he did use it to remove a shock, which meant Crimson Dynamo actually had a really good turn 1 point. I did end up using Heroes for Hire though to throw Crimson Dynamo at Sam, which is eventually what took Sam off the table. So that was really important. It didn't obviously stop anything there, and actually that round, Luke Cage also left the table from those beams off of Crimson Dynamo. But at that point, he'd kind of already done his job. Heroes for Hire had been spent, and he'd scored me a lot of points that game, so it was worth it. He ends up moving his Crimson Dynamo onto the middle point because his is still healthy and mine was not. I don't remember exactly when it went down, but it did go down in one of the previous rounds. So the middle point was going to be his for the rest of the game because I didn't really have any consistent way of taking down Dynamo short of Black Panther, but Black Panther had other things to deal with, such as his Luke Cage. So that most likely wasn't happening. But then what ends up happening is the end of the round. Or not Luke Cage, Lizard KOs himself on his cube. So then we're looking at the final round, and I'm basically like, okay, well, you've got Dynamo, and I've got my Dynamo to prevent him from doing anything. So I put a shock on him super early on, and I'm just like, well, you're not gonna do anything to me with your Dynamo. Your Luke Cage isn't going to do anything. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, his Sam was only dazed at that point, not KO'd. I don't think I'd actually been able to KO him at this point. Um, but he had Sam on his back point, and I had Black Panther contesting it now. and Black Panther was basically saying, well, if you go to try and affect the other side of the board, you're going to give me 2 points, or you can stay here and try to deal with Black Panther, who you're not going to be able to deal with. Even if you get a lucky push on me, I have Avengers Assemble and I'm just going to walk back onto it. So what I end up doing is I just basically, I say, you're not going to damage me at all this turn. I think I either took Cage out of the game this turn or just kind of shoved him away so he wouldn't be relevant. Don't remember exactly which one happened. Um, but I have Cap go grab a couple extracts on a couple of the extracts that have fallen around my back point at this point. So Cap's now sitting on 3 cubes, hasn't taken any damage all game, has nothing coming at him other than cube damage, of course. Has nothing coming at him and nothing that can really hit him. So Cap by himself ends up scoring me 4 points this round, and then I don't think the other points ended up really mattering at all. I tied him on one of them, and his dynamo still existed, but didn't matter at that point because a shocked dynamo that's forced to deal with another dynamo in its face just really isn't doing anything. So that was good, and that was the final round of the tournament. So that was the event there, the Phoenix Rising November tournament. It was a really good event, lots of great players. All of my opponents were great people. They were fun games. Everyone was great. They all felt like they were good players, and it was some really tight games. I mean, none of the games felt like an absolute stomp either way. So that was really really good. I got to play against some really interesting lists too. Like I said, I haven't done the Avengers mirror very often, and that's one of my favorite mirrors. Is just that like wall of everything's going to come down to these small positioning things and stuff like that. It's a really fun game. I quite enjoy that type of game, so that was really cool. Cal's always great, and his Midnight Suns list was really fun to play against. I haven't played against Midnight Suns in a while at this point, so that was cool. I was happy to get my other shot at Kyle and his Web Warriors. Unfortunately, I lost this one, but next time, hopefully. And I also haven't played against Weapon X in a while, so that was an exciting one as well. Obviously, I wish Ultron had popped off a little less hard there, but it was still a good game, and David is a really fun opponent to play against, so that was good. But yeah, overall it went really really well. I'm pretty happy with how I did. I think my both of my losses here, while 2-2 isn't the best score in the world, both my losses were really really close games that did come down to kind of a couple dice swings my way and it would have been my way. So that was really nice. You always want to have close games. You never want to go to an event and just see it be a sweep either way. So that was nice. And yeah, just fantastic, fantastic event, fantastic group of people all around. So yeah, there's not much more to say about it than that. Kind of lessons learned on the list. I think Thanos is really, really hard to squeeze in, especially two stone Thanos. There was one point where I thought about maybe if he'd just been single stone, I might have tried to squeeze him. But I'm gonna play around with it some more, see if there's more situations where I'd be okay with bringing him. But I really don't think there's that many scenario layouts where I actually think he's all that worth it. At least with the stones that I've brought on him. So we'll see. I'm not 100% sold on whether or not he's going to be a long-standing member of the list. But I do know right now I'm just not expecting to keep Steve 3 in the list very much. So I think right now Thanos is just kind of the placeholder for that until I kind of decide what I want to do with it. Obviously, there's an argument for another 3 threat or something like that, so I can do a better Sam spam. But Luke Cage and Iron Man just do so much work for me, and Gwen, the few times that I bring her is really really effective when I do because she is just such a fantastic model. So yeah, there's there's some things kind of up in the air with the list right now, but I'm really just trying to move away from that kind of what I used to call it as the Hulk delivery system. I'm really trying to move away from him a little bit because he's a very swingy model sometimes that can kind of make or break games on a few dice rolls, and I don't want to do that. I want a little bit more consistency. So we'll see. We're gonna change some things up hopefully in the near future, but yeah, no, this was a super fun event, and I definitely look forward to the next one. And again, I can hopefully get another rematch with Kyle at some point and maybe try it and dethrone those webs there. But yeah, overall, great event. Had a good time. And yeah, so with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this tournament recap. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do stuff like this as well as character spotlights and battle reports all the time. Battle report, obviously, unfortunately, not happening this weekend like they normally do. But starting next weekend again, hopefully we will have those back to their regular weekly schedule. So yeah, that's all I got to say for this one. So one more time, hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, have a great day. Peace.